should every other parliament in Australia.
Order. Senator Gallagher. Questions without notice. Senator Gallagher. Sorry, Senator Birmingham. My apologies.
Thanks, Mr. President. I seek leave to make a statement regarding a ministerial absence.
Leave is granted.
Thanks, Mr. President. I advise the Senate that Senator Reynolds will be absent from question time for the remainder of this week for personal reasons. In Senator Reynolds' absence, Senator Payne will represent the Minister for Defence, the Minister for Veterans Affairs, the Minister for Defence Personnel and the Minister for Defence Industry. Senator Cash will represent the Minister for Home Affairs.
Senator Wong.
I seek leave to make a very short statement.
Leave is granted.
Thank you. The opposition expresses its best wishes to Senator Reynolds for a speedy recovery.
Senator Gallagher.
Thank you, Mr. President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Birmingham. Yesterday, the Minister for Defence claimed twice, for complete clarity, that she had met with the Australian Federal Police on 2 occasions, with the first meeting being on the 1st of April 2019 with Ms Higgins and her then Chief of Staff. The Minister was then forced to correct the record. This is the second time this week that the Minister for Defence has been forced to correct her statements during question time. Does the Prime Minister have full confidence in the Minister's account to the Parliament in relation to these matters?
The Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, Mr. President. Mr. President, yes, the Prime Minister has full confidence in Senator Reynolds and in her work in her portfolio and her handling of these very sensitive matters, including her work to ensure the Parliament is informed in relation to these matters, whilst being cognisant of the responsibilities, as Senator Reynolds has outlined, to treat carefully and with confidence information that was shared with her, to respect Ms Brittany Higgins' right to tell her story and to be mindful of consequences for any potential police investigation.
Senator Gallagher, a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr. President. What steps has the Prime Minister taken to ensure Minister Reynolds' explanation of her conduct in response to allegations of rape in her office are accurate?
Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, Mr. President. Well, as the opposition, the Parliament and more broadly is known, there are a number of review processes underway that includes work in relation to ascertaining the handling of events in relation to this matter. However, it is also important that that work is cognisant of any potential implications in relation to police investigations too.
Senator Gallagher, a final supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Prime Minister has publicly rebuked Minister Reynolds for failing to tell him of allegations of rape in her office 2 years ago. Minister Reynolds has said it is not her story to tell. Who is correct, Minister Reynolds or the Prime Minister?
Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, Mr. President. I think Senator Reynolds has been clear in this place that in relation to the details of what Ms Brittany Higgins shared with Senator Reynolds and her former Chief of Staff, that they should absolutely make sure that Ms Higgins's wishes and privacy are respected during that time, and that Ms Reynolds, Senator Reynolds, has been careful in relation to the manner in which she has shared that information. And the Prime Minister has indicated that in relation to matters of serious crimes he would expect to be informed, and I think his statements stand in that regard.
Senator Smith.
Thank you, Mr. President. My question is also to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Birmingham. Can the Minister update the Senate on how the Morrison government's economic recovery plan is helping to chart our way out of the COVID-19 pandemic?
The Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Birmingham.
Well, thanks, Mr. President. I thank Senator Smith for his question. Indeed, Mr. President, as all Australians appreciate and people right around the world know, in the last 12 months the world faced the largest economic shock since the Great Depression. But pleasingly, Australia's economic recovery is working. We're seeing Australians getting back into jobs and seeing confidence building across the Australian economy. Just last week we learnt the unemployment rate had fallen yet again across Australia, from 6.6% to 6.4% in January. Indeed, more than 59,000 full-time jobs were created across the Australian economy in January. Around 93% of those jobs lost at the height of the pandemic have come back. And that means hundreds of thousands of jobs have been created over the past few months, and pleasingly the majority of those jobs have seen Australian women re-entering the workforce. We've seen the underemployment rate hit its lowest level in years, Mr President. Not only are we seeing new jobs being created, but the economy is showing great resilience. Today, the wage price index increased by 0.6% in the December quarter, beating market expectations. The outcome was driven by stronger growth in private sector wages, which increased by 0.7%, the strongest quarterly outcome in private sector wages since 2014. We've seen business and consumer confidence get back to their pre-pandemic levels, resilience in the housing market and in motor vehicle sales. We've also seen resilience across the Australian economy in relation to government support programs, with more than 2 million people graduating off of JobKeeper in the December quarter and another 500,000 people graduating off of JobKeeper just last month. Fitch, the credit rating agency, has reaffirmed Australia's AAA credit rating, one of only 9 countries in the world, Mr President, to have a AAA credit rating from the leading 3 credit ratings agencies. That's the testament to Australia's economic strength. There is a job to continue to do, but we are absolutely seeing significant progress.
Senator Smith, a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. Can the minister advise the Senate how the vaccine rollout will support confidence and help secure an Australian way out of the pandemic?
Senator Birmingham.
Well, thanks, Mr President. Fitch, in their restatement of the credit rating, noted that the vaccine rollout should support domestic sentiment and said, and I quote, that our economy, Australia's economy, has weathered the pandemic well compared with peers, and pointed out our successful virus containment and our effective fiscal and monetary response to the pandemic. The vaccine rollout commenced this week with the rollout of the Pfizer vaccine around the country. This is the significant step in our fight against the COVID-19 pandemic and the next stages of recovery. The vaccine rollout will help to reinforce confidence across our economy. We ask every Australian to get the vaccine, which is critical to protecting them from serious illness or potentially something even worse. People in priority groups who are most at risk and who need protection the most will and are receiving the vaccine first. Under our plan, some 240 aged care facilities across the country and 16 major public hospitals, 60,000 Australians living and working in aged care and disabilities care will receive the vaccine first, along with frontline workers.
Senator Smith, a final supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. Can the minister outline to the Senate further measures that will underpin our continued strong economic recovery post the pandemic?
Senator Birmingham.
Well, Mr President, as I said earlier, we've seen good news on the jobs front in January, when we went through that last change in gear on JobKeeper and JobSeeker. We've always maintained that these were temporary measures designed to taper off as economic confidence recovered and momentum builds, and we're seeing that recovery underway. We recognise there are some challenges ahead, though. That's why we're making some of the permanent changes to our social security system, as announced yesterday. As at the 1st of April, 1.95 million Australians who are currently accessing working age payment will see a permanent $50 per fortnight increase in their rate of payment. It is, Mr President, the single biggest year-on-year increase to the rate of unemployment benefits since 1986, but comes at significant budgetary cost of around $9 billion. In addition, we are also permanently increasing the amount of money job seekers can earn before they lose a cent of payment to $150 per fortnight. This is a continuation of the carefully considered, balanced approach our government has taken through the pandemic to supporting
Senator
Australians
Birmingham.
and the Australian economy.
Before I come to you, Senator Keneally, could I draw to the attention of honourable senators the presence in the gallery of the Ambassador of Thailand to Australia, Her Excellency Ms Buzadi Santipitaks. On behalf of all senators, I wish you a warm welcome to the Parliament and in particular to the Senate. Senator Keneally.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Home Affairs, Senator Cash. The Australian Federal Police National Guidelines on Sensitive Investigations, together with the AFP's guidelines for ministerial briefings, outline how the AFP must manage sensitive matters and keep the Minister for Home Affairs informed. The guideline requires that the AFP SES officers must brief the Minister, and I quote, as soon as possible about matters where there is anticipated media attention or political implications. Did the AFP inform the Minister for Home Affairs about Ms Higgins' alleged rape in the Minister for Defence office as required by these guidelines? If so, when? And if not, why not?
The Minister representing the Minister for Home Affairs, Senator Cash.
Thank you, Mr President, and I thank Senator Keneally for the question. Senator Keneally, I can advise as follows. I can advise the Senate that AFP Commissioner Kershaw first advised Minister Dutton of Ms Higgins' allegations on Thursday, the 11th of February 2021. This was the first time the Minister was advised of Ms Higgins' allegations. The Minister received further verbal updates from Commissioner Kershaw during last week and this week. I am advised that the Minister's office was not aware of Ms Higgins' allegations prior to the Minister's briefing from Commissioner Kershaw on the 11th of February 2021. As senators would know, Mr President, the handling of allegations and investigation of criminal conduct, including briefing to ministers, is a matter for the Australian Federal Police. Nevertheless, the Minister has sought and received assurances from the Commissioner of the AFP that the investigation will leave no stone unturned.
Senator Keneally, a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. The AFP defines a sensitive investigation as likely to impact or be of significant interest to, quote, an elected member or associate or staff member of an elected member. Did the AFP declare the alleged rape of Ms Higgins in the Defence Minister's office as a sensitive matter consistent with the guidelines? And if not, why not?
Senator Cash.
Thank you, Mr President. And Senator Keneally, in relation to that question, I will need to take it on notice and revert back to you.
Senator Keneally, a final supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. Ms Higgins has said that Minister Cash's Chief of Staff told her, and I quote, "Don't worry, we will call Dutton." Did the Minister for Home Affairs or his staff discuss Ms Higgins' case with any other minister or ministerial staff member, including Minister Reynolds?
Senator Cash.
Again, Senator Keneally, I refer to the answer I gave you in my first question in relation to any additional information on behalf of Minister Dutton. I will need to take that on notice and revert to you.
Senator McMahon.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Health and Aged Care, Senator Colbeck. Can the Minister update the Senate on the national COVID vaccine rollout, particularly to remote and Indigenous communities?
The Minister representing the Minister for Health and Aged Care, Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr President. Thank you, Senator McMahon, for your question. This week is a historic week for all Australians. We are now into day 3 of the mass vaccine rollout across the country. We are prioritising the most vulnerable in our society to receive the vaccine first, Mr President. Aged care residents and border and quarantine frontline health workers are being offered the vaccine this week. Among the 240 facilities and 190 towns in regional and remote centres across the country to receive the vaccines this week, vaccinations are occurring in the Northern Territory, the territory you are so proud to represent, Senator McMahon. And I can indicate that, as of this morning, 249 residents of aged care facilities in the Northern Territory have received a vaccination. The Royal Darwin Hospital will also be working to vaccinate frontline healthcare workers. The most vulnerable are part of Phase 1A of the vaccine rollout. Phase 1B will include Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people over 55, adults aged over 70, other healthcare workers, younger adults with an underlying health condition, including those with a disability, and high-risk workers, including defence, police, fire emergency services and meat processing workers, Mr President. Phase 2A includes Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people aged 15 to 54 years, adults aged 50 to 69 years and other critical high-risk workers, Mr President. Phase 2B expands the remainder of the population over the age of 16.
Senator McMahon, a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. Given that people on remote communities are extremely mobile and on any day a large proportion of the population may be away, can the Minister detail how we are going to ensure that people receive their follow-up vaccination within the manufacturer's timeframe?
Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr President. Thanks, Senator McMahon, for the supplementary question. The rollout of the COVID-19 vaccines into regional, rural and remote communities is a vital part of the Australian Government's vaccine strategy to protect our rural and remote communities and manage the fight against virus in the regions. Both the Pfizer, BioNTech and AstraZeneca vaccines require 2 separate doses for a person to be fully immunised. Pfizer, BioNTech 21 days apart and AstraZeneca 12 weeks apart, Mr President. The rural health workforce has been integral to managing the challenge of the COVID pandemic over the year, and our rural health workforce is vital to the success of our vaccination rollout, and we will again be relying on them, and we know we can rely on them to follow up individuals and deliver for our remote communities. We commend the efforts of all the doctors, nurses, midwives, pharmacists and allied health workers, Mr President, in our rural and remote areas, and thank them for their efforts.
Senator McMahon, a final supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. Can the minister inform the Senate how the vaccination rollout complements the government's commitment to the health of Indigenous Australians?
Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr President. Improving Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander health remains a high priority for our government and a central component of the new national agreement on closing the gap, Mr President. To drive progress towards our closing the gap commitments, we are working in partnership with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander health experts to refresh the National Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Health Plan. The Indigenous Health Australians Healthcare Program is investing approximately $4 million, Mr President, over 4 years to improve the health and well-being of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. The government recognises Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Australians may be particularly vulnerable, Mr President, to the impacts and restrictions put in place as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and we provided support to develop culturally appropriate mental health and wellbeing resources to support First Australians during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Senator Griff.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister representing the Treasurer, Senator Birmingham. The Buy Now, Pay Later industry announced today a voluntary code of practice. The industry has claimed this will impose minimum standards across all providers, but the code still allows purchases up to $2,000 to be made without any checking at all if a user has any income or debts, and it means $10,000 of purchases, for example, could be made without the platform understanding if it is affordable for the borrower. If a provider violates the code, the only penalty is to be named by the Finance Industry Association. Does the government believe this is adequate?
The Minister representing the Treasurer, Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, Mr President, and I thank the Senator for his question. My understanding is that the Australian Securities and Investment Commission undertook a review into this sector and determined that a code should be voluntary. I am advised that indeed an announcement of that was made by the sector today, that the sector has indicated it is putting in place a code which I understand comes into effect from the 5th of October 2021, that it's supported by regulatory powers that do enable ASIC to intervene where it identifies significant consumer detriment and to ensure that products are designed to suit target consumers. I understand the code has attracted support of more than 95% of the market in relation to buy now, pay later sector, and has crucial points that any late fees must be capped, that it imposes some compulsory membership obligations in the sector, that it must follow the design and distribution obligations from the ASIC review, and that providers must monitor vulnerable customers. I don't, Senator, have details in relation to the precise thresholds that you have identified, but in terms of any further safeguards applicable under the code or other measures for individuals in relation to those lower threshold of loans or purchases, I shall bring any further information back to the chamber for you.
Senator Griff, a supplementary question.
Minister, buy now, pay later services do not require credit assessments, affordability checks, income verification or to comply with lending obligations. Now, in comparison, So-called payday lenders are regulated and must undertake comprehensive credit assessments and comply with responsible lending obligations. Why does the government regulate one type of short-term, high-cost credit, but not the other?
Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, Mr. President. Well, look, I would refer the senator to the findings of the ASIC review, which I think did look carefully at the differences in relation to some of these sectors. There's obviously been a rapid period of growth in relation to buy now, pay later arrangements, with companies such as Afterpay growing and creating a significant and popular arrangement for consumers. The ASIC report highlighted that providers are improving aspects of their business practices, that they are expecting membership of the Financial Complaints Authority as part of their operations, that they're making information about their complaints and hardship processes more accessible to consumers, while others are now referring consumers to financial counselling services in the event consumers are facing financial difficulty. ASIC, I know, is continuing to collect data on this industry and monitor changes in it, and will continue to do so in terms of the consideration
Senator
of
Birmingham.
the different sectors.
Senator Griff, a final supplementary question.
Earlier this month, the UK government published a review of the buy now, pay later industry, and that review found the industry targets younger and less financially literate users, allowing them to access credit without checks and to hide debts from other lenders. Some users, of course, become trapped with unaffordable debts. That government chose to reclassify the services as credit providers and regulate them accordingly. When will this government do the same?
Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, Mr. President. Well, I'm advised the UK government's review did acknowledge that buy now, pay later arrangements can also provide clear benefits to consumers, whilst they have sought to identify and address some of the regulatory issues in the UK consumer credit obligation. What we see is that young people, in particular, are using less credit, particularly reduced use of credit cards since the growth of buy now, pay later services. And so there is some product substitution in relation to financing options occurring in this regard. As I indicated before, ASIC will continue to review these matters, and particularly the implementation of the industry code as announced today.
Senator Brockman.
Thank you, Mr. President. My question is to the Minister for Employment, Skills, Small and Family Business, Senator Cash. Can the minister please update the Senate on how the Morrison government is leading generational change in our vocational education and training system to create a world-class and uniquely Australian training system?
The Minister for Employment, Skills, Small and Family Business, Senator Cash.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and I thank Senator Brockman for the question. And Senator Brockman, indeed, skills and training are at the centre of the Morrison government's economic recovery plan for Australia as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. And indeed, as our Prime Minister has said himself, this will be a year of generational change in our skills and vocational education sector. And, Mr. President, as we emerge from COVID-19, the Morrison government will invest almost $7 billion to keep apprentices and trainees on the job, but not only that, to actually create opportunities for 100,000 new apprentices and trainees to come on into the system, and of course to help our fellow Australians who are in need of upskilling or reskilling so that they can move back into the labour market. Mr. President, we are creating and transforming vocational education and training in Australia. And of course, critical to this is the work that we're doing through the National Cabinet for a new skills agreement, a new skills funding agreement to provide more transparency, but also to better link the funding that the Australian taxpayer ultimately provides to actual skills needs across Australia. And this new funding agreement will build on the work that we've already done as a government in relation to ensuring we have a strong skills system. And of course, the first thing we had to do, Mr. President, when we were elected to office, is clean up the mess created by those opposite in relation to Labor's vet fee help system. Now, colleagues, the problem with Labor is their policies linger. And I have to just inform the Senate that to date, in relation to Labor's disastrous vet fee help scheme, Mr President, we have now spent, or the taxpayer has spent, over $2 billion, colleagues, recrediting the victims of this disastrous policy. So the Morrison government cleaned up Labor's mess, and we are ensuring we're putting skills and training at the forefront of the economic recovery.
A supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. I certainly do have a supplementary question. Can the minister advise the Senate on how the Job Trainer Fund is demonstrating the capability of the Commonwealth and the states to partner and provide world-class training opportunities to Australians?
Senator Cash.
Well, Mr President, as part of our record investment as a government, the almost $7 billion that we are investing in skills and training across Australia, this of course includes our $1 billion Job Trainer Fund, and this is, as you know, in partnership with the states and territories across Australia to provide free or low-cost low-cost training in areas, and this was the key, in areas of skills demand. It's based on labour market modelling from the National Skills Commission, and it's providing now Job Trainer over 300,000 training places, as I said, in areas of skills demand across the economy. And Senator Brockman, indeed, in our home state of Western Australia, we now have over 16,000 training places available. That's free or low-cost training places available in areas of demand, and that includes courses like cybersecurity, horticulture and disability support. Again, the $1 billion Job Trainer Fund helping Australians upskill, reskill and ensure that they're equipped to get a job.
Brockman, a final supplementary question.
Can the minister outline to the Senate how the government's use of employer incentives have kept apprentices and trainees on the job through the COVID-19 pandemic, and how they will support a new generation of Australians to reskill and get high-quality jobs?
Senator Cash.
Well, Mr President, from the outset of COVID-19, the government understood that one of our first economic priorities had to be to put in place the policy so that our employers could keep their apprentices and their trainees on the job where we needed them the most. And we've done that through our Supporting Apprentices and Trainees wage subsidy, and that continues to run through until March this year. And in fact, Mr President, as at the 11th of February, the Supporting Apprentices measure has now assisted over 62,600 businesses, and I'm pleased to say, as the Minister for Small and Family Business, that actually includes 98% of that figure of small businesses, and it's helped them retain almost 120,000 apprentices and trainees. So that's 120,000 apprentices and trainees that have been kept on the job because of the economic response that the Morrison government put in place. And of course, we also have our $1.2 billion boosting apprenticeship commencements, which aims to create 100,000 new apprenticeships.
The answer has expired. Senator McKim.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Immigration and the Minister for Home Affairs. Minister, can you confirm that earlier this year there was a significant disturbance or riot at the Christmas Island Detention Centre that involved up to 200 canisters of tear gas being fired into the compound? What was the nature of the disturbance, and were there any injuries? What steps were taken to ensure the safety of the family from Biloela, who are detained nearby? Were the family, in particular the young children, impacted in any way, including psychologically? What measures has the government taken since to assess the impact on the family, in particular the children, and to ensure their well-being?
The Minister representing the Ministers for Immigration and Home Affairs, Senator Cash.
Thank you, Mr President, and I thank Senator McKim for the question. Senator McKim, I understand you are referring to an incident that occurred in February of this year, February 2021, whereby a male detainee was seen on the roof of a building at Villawood Detention Centre. I could, in relation to then what you are referring to, I will need to take that on notice and get you some further advice on that. In relation to the Biloela family itself, that was part of the question. Again, Senator McKim, and I know we've talked through this before, and I think it is one of those issues that we will need to agree to disagree on in relation to that, but you'd be aware that the full court of the Federal Court, their judgment was recently delivered, and certainly the full Federal Court, the department is now considering the implications of that decision, as you know. But again, if I go back to the history of the Biloela family, just to remind the chamber that both adults arrived in Australia, Senator McKim, as you know, as illegal maritime arrivals, meaning that they paid a people smuggler and arrived in Australia illegally by boat, and after arriving in Australia illegally by boat, they met and they had 2 children. Since 2012, and again, Senator McKim, I know you are aware of these facts, but just to ensure that we are placing them again on the record, the family's claim to engage Australia's protection obligations have been comprehensively assessed, as you know, and the family has consistently been found not to be owed protection. But again, Senator McKim, in relation to the issue that you raised at the beginning of your question, to the extent that I can, I will seek further information for you and ensure that you are provided with that information.
Senator McKim, a supplementary question.
Thanks, President. And just to assist the minister, I believe it was about early to mid-January on Christmas Island. Minister, how much money has your government spent needlessly detaining the family from Biloela, and how much have you spent on legal costs against that family to date? How can you possibly justify that expenditure?
Senator Cash.
Well, again, Senator McKim, we're going to have to agree to disagree. You and I have done this dance before, and I don't propose to do the dance again. But I do need to remind the chamber that a fundamental difference between the Morrison government, those on the coalition side of politics, and in particular, Senator McKim, the Australian Greens and the Australian Labor Party, is that we believe in sovereign borders. That is it. Full stop.
Senator Cash, Senator McKim on a point of order. Order on my left. Senator McKim on a point of order.
Thank you very much, President. Point of order on relevance. I asked how much money the government has spent detaining the family from Biloela and in legal costs against the family. I ask that you remind the minister.
Senator McKim, that was the first part of the question. The second part was much more widely written. It was how can you possibly justify? And I think, with respect, that the minister has a lot of discretion in answering such a wide question. I regard that question as quite wide. The first part was quite specific, I grant you, but in this case I think the minister is being relevant to the second part of the question. Senator Cash.
And that is exactly right. You did mention expense, Senator McKim, so I do need to remind you that the border protection failures of those opposite, combined with the Australian Greens, cost the Australian taxpayer.
Senator Cash. Senator McKim on a point of order.
Yes, it's again on relevance, President, and in regards to your first ruling, that the second part of my question was how can you possibly justify this expenditure? That is the expenditure that I referred to in the first part of my supplementary question. So I would put to you respectfully that in fact it's quite a tightly worded question and the minister is not being relevant to it.
Senator McKim, the first part of your question I do regard as a factual question. The second part of the question asks the minister for an explanation, and your point of order goes to the content or the validity of that explanation. And I think that's a matter for debate after question time. Senator Cash.
Thank you, Mr. President. As I was saying, Senator McKim, $17 billion. That is how I'm justifying it. $17 billion worth of taxpayers' money had to be outlaid to protect Australians from your border protection failures. 50,000 people arriving on 800 boats, 1,200 lives lost at sea, 8,000 children detained while Labor was in government, and in July 2013, let's just remind people, 10,201 people in detention.
Has expired. Senator Cash, time for the answer has expired. There was too much noise approaching the end of that answer. Even I was having trouble hearing the minister. Senator McKim.
Thank you. As a final supplementary, could I ask the minister to clarify, was she actually saying that she has spent $17 billion imprisoning and in legal action against the Biloela family? Could you first address that, please, Minister? Secondly, why are you ignoring the hundreds of thousands of Australians who've called for this innocent family's release? How much more money will you spend trying to deport them and needlessly detaining them? And why will you not do the right thing and return them to where they are loved and supported in Biloela?
Senator Cash.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. And Senator McKim, I'm just going to have to completely reject the premise of your question. In answer to your question, let me just remind you, Senator McKim, that on this side of the chamber, the Morrison government side of the chamber, we believe in sovereign borders. We will determine who comes to this country and the circumstances in which they come.
Order.
When you refer to the Biloela family, I need to
chamber.
remind you that the principle is this. Both adults arrived in
Order.
Australia
Senator
as
Keneally.
illegal maritime arrivals, meaning, Senator McKim, they paid a people smuggler and they arrived in Australia illegally by boat.
Keneally.
You may, Senator McKim, think that is okay.
Sorry, Senator McKim, on a point of order.
In fact, the entirety of that family did not
Sorry,
arrive
Senator
in
McKim,
Australia.
what is your point of order? What is your point of order, Senator McKim?
The minister's misleading the Senate.
Senator McKim, the content of answers is debated after question time. Can I ask senators for a little bit less disorder, please? Senator Cash.
Well, thank you, Mr President. And again, the fundamental difference, colleagues, is this. The Greens want to give the keys to our borders back to the people smugglers, and we say no. We say no.
Order.
We've taken
Senator
back
Thorpe
control
on
of
a
our
point
borders.
of order. I have Senator Thorpe on a point of order. Order. Senator Keneally. Senator Thorpe on a point of order.
Thank you, Mr President. And my point of order is in relation to misleading the chamber on talking about sovereign borders.
I'm afraid, Senator
As
Thorpe,
a sovereign
Senator Thorpe,
woman,
please. Senator
sovereignty
Thorpe,
belongs
Senator
to
Thorpe,
us,
please
and that
resume your
family is—
seat. Senator Thorpe, points of order must be about the standing orders. I'm not going to allow points of order to debate the content of answers, and I will take that very strictly. Senator Cash to continue.
Thank you, Mr President. The Morrison government, the coalition government, have taken back control of our borders from the people smugglers.
Order, Senator Cash. Time for the answers expired. Senator Patrick.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Infrastructure, Transport and Regional Development, a trifecta for Senator Cash. Regional Express Airlines, which was the recipient of a multi-million-dollar support package from the Australian taxpayer throughout the COVID crisis, this week announced that it will axe 5 key routes across the country, including the Adelaide to Kangaroo Island route in my home state of South Australia. This comes a week before they launch their first Sydney to Melbourne flights. Has the federal government engaged Rex Airlines about these axed routes, including Adelaide to Kangaroo Island, and is the government considering extending its regional airlines assistance program, which these routes are being subsidised with?
The Minister representing the Minister for Infrastructure, Transport and Regional Development, Senator Cash.
Thank you, Mr President, and I thank Senator Patrick for the question. And Senator Patrick, I can advise as follows. The government, I can advise, is in daily discussions with airlines to understand the needs of the sector and ensure our programs are supporting the communities that they fly to. You'd understand, though, that decisions on network configurations and scheduling are ultimately a commercial matter for the airlines themselves, and this includes, as you've referred to in your question, Rex's decision to cease the Adelaide to Kangaroo Island route. The regional aviation network support does not compel airlines to fly 2 particular routes. However, we continue to monitor the need for future support, whether it be through aviation measures or broader economic measures. You'd be aware that Rex is one of 15 operators receiving funding to ensure critical aviation services, particularly in regional and remote Australia, through the COVID-19 pandemic and the impact on the aviation sector, to ensure essential workers can travel domestically, support health transport services and distribute critical goods and equipment. The regional aviation network support, as you'd be aware, currently runs until March, and I am advised that we, obviously as a government, we continue to monitor the situation and continue further support if necessary. Qantas themselves, in a media release, has stated we will be reviewing our network and consider whether we can offer services on any of the routes that Rex is threatening to pull out of. And I think you know, from the government's perspective, we've always been of the opinion that Australia's aviation industry does have a bright future ahead, and I am confident that we will rebuild throughout 2021 and beyond.
Senator Patrick, a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. Has the government engaged South Australia's Tourism Minister that's Premier Stephen Marshall, about the impact this axing will have on tourism in Kangaroo Island, which is still recovering from the horrific bushfires last year and a loss of tourism dollars from COVID-19 shutdowns and border restrictions, and if not, will they at some stage in the future?
Senator Cash.
Thank you, Senator Patrick. Again, and I refer to my answer to your first question. The government is in daily discussions with airlines to understand the needs of the sector and ensure our programs are supporting the communities they fly to. The government also expects all state and territory governments to engage with airlines to ensure the required support for their local communities and regions are considered, particularly with inter- and intra-state routes. Airlines, as you know, are receiving government assistance under different government programs based on their specific circumstances. And as stated in my previous answer,
Senator Patrick, on a point of order.
Just on relevance, Mr President, I was keenly interested in the engagement that might have taken place between the government and the South Australian Tourism Minister, Premier Marshall.
He reminded the minister of the question. She has 18 seconds remaining to answer. I shall listen carefully. Senator Cash.
And thank you. And in relation to those discussions, I will take that on notice. But the government, as I've said, is in daily discussions themselves with the airlines, and our expectation, obviously, is that state and territory governments are also engaging with airlines to ensure that the required support for their local communities and regions is considered.
Senator Cash. Senator Patrick, a final supplementary question.
Mr President, what is the government's plan to ensure that the aviation sector remains safe, available and affordable to regional areas in Australia, and particularly those reliant on tourism such as Kangaroo Island?
Senator Cash.
Well, Senator Patrick, I can advise that in June 2020, the government directed the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission, the ACCC, to monitor the prices, costs and profits of Australia's domestic airline industry and provide quarterly reports to inform government policy. The ACCC continues to monitor airline activity and has published 2 quarterly reports on airline competition in Australia in September and December 2020. The programs that the government itself has put in place have been targeted specific to the needs of Australian communities and developed, as you know, in close consultation with the sector. The focus of the Australian government's efforts has been to keep essential services running, and this has enabled funding to flow through to the aviation sector, ensuring that the maximum number of jobs can be supported. And unfortunately, I don't have time, but I could take you through the 5-year plan we have for aviation.
Senator
but that
Cash.
will wait for another
Senator
day.
Gallagher.
Thanks, Mr President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Birmingham. In an article entitled PM Intervenes in Submarine Debacle, the Australian Financial Review has reported that, and I quote, 2 senior naval officers have been tasked by the Prime Minister Scott Morrison to examine options for Australia's submarine fleet amid ongoing tensions with the French over the $90 billion future submarines program. Can the Minister confirm that the Prime Minister is so concerned over the bungling of the future subs program by the Minister of Defence that he was left with no choice but to intervene?
The Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, Mr President. Well, no, I cannot confirm that, because I certainly do not accept some of the statements made in the Senator's question, Mr President. This government has taken strong action to ensure that our defence forces will have the capability they require for the future, in particular the naval capability they will require for the future. In seeking to deliver that naval capability, including future submarines, this government has also committed very significantly to ensure we build sovereign defence industry capability in this country as well. And the actions that we have taken stand in stark contrast, Mr President, to the inaction of those asking the questions in this regard.
Senator Keneally.
As a government, Mr President, we have taken serious action to make sure that we commission the building of new defence infrastructure, of new defence assets, of new naval assets in this country, including future frigates and including future submarines. And we've done so in contrast to those opposite who commissioned not one new Australian-built naval vessel. Our commitment is to make sure that these projects are delivered, Mr President, delivered according to the timelines that have been announced, delivered according to the commitments around Australian industry capability. And our focus will be on ensuring in that delivery that we secure the value for money. I hear Senator Wong say that you still haven't delivered on, like somehow they were going to be built yesterday. Well, they would have been built a lot sooner if those opposite had actually commissioned any of them, if they'd actually made any types of decisions in that regard. We have made the decisions to do them. We have made the decisions to build these things, Senator Wong. We have made the decisions that you failed to make. We have made sure that we have made those decisions. We have signed those contracts. There is indeed, on the future frigates, still being cut, work happening, work underway, and under your lot you couldn't even make the decision to do it in the first place. We have the work commencing.
Order, Senator Wong. Senator Gallagher is on his feet. Senator Gallagher has the call. Order.
Thanks, Mr President. When did the Prime Minister make the decision to intervene and call in 2 senior Navy officers to examine the whole program?
Senator Birmingham.
Mr President, the Prime Minister stays very close in terms of monitoring the progress on delivering against these critical national defence infrastructure capabilities. He works to make sure that—
Order. Senator Wong on a point of order.
Mr President, direct relevance. The minister may have spent most of his first answer talking what happened almost a decade ago. This is a very, very specific question about when the Prime Minister made a decision to intervene. I'd ask you to draw this minister to the question.
I've been listening to the minister for 11 seconds. I thought he was talking about the Prime Minister, so I'm going to actually— Senator Wong, 11 seconds in, I haven't heard enough to determine that where he's going is not going to be directly relevant. I've allowed you to remind the minister of the question, and I shall listen to it. Senator Birmingham.
Answer the question. Now, Mr President, as I was saying, the Prime Minister and Minister Reynolds and every member of the Cabinet are very focused on ensuring these projects are delivered to meet the naval requirements for the future. I don't accept all of the imputations in relation to Senator Gallagher's questions in the primary question, or indeed the fact that I'm going— There's a report in the Financial Review, I hear, from Senator Keneally. Well, of course. We'll
Senator
just run off of media reports, shall we? No, what our government's focused on doing—
Senator Wong on a point of order.
Point of order, direct relevance. When did the Prime Minister make the decision to intervene and call in the two senior Navy officers to examine the whole program? That is the only question we have asked. I asked this minister to demonstrate some accountability to the Parliament, some observation of the standing orders and be directly relevant.
The minister was referring to the quotation in the substantive question that was related to this, I believe. It is a very tight— but I cannot— I cannot instruct the minister how to answer the question. At that point, he directly said he did not agree with some of the imputations that this question was drawn from, I believe, that were in the quotation in the substantive question. So as long as the minister is narrowly construed to that, I can't instruct him on the content of the answer. I will take some advice after— I'm happy to take some advice, Senator Wong, after this, and if I am incorrect, I will happily report so to the chamber. Senator Birmingham.
Now, Mr President, I'm sorry to break it to Senator Wong, Senator Gallagher or those opposite, but indeed the Prime Minister and Minister Reynolds rely on a lot more than 2 senior defence officers in relation to the delivery of these critical pieces of defence infrastructure. So, Mr President, we are working hand in glove with Defence, with companies, to get
Senator
the assets
Birmingham,
our Navy
the
needs.
answer has expired. Senator Gallagher, a final supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. When did the Minister for Defence first become aware that the Prime Minister was forced to intervene to fix this debacle? When?
Senator Birmingham.
Well, Mr President, I completely reject that question and the underlying premise behind it, because, Mr President, the Prime Minister and Minister Reynolds are consistently engaged and working together in relation to the delivery of these projects, along with the members of the National Security Committee of the Cabinet, along with the relevant Defence Department officials and agencies. That's what's happening, Mr President, is a government that works as a cabinet government, a Prime Minister and his ministers working together to make sure that we achieve the outcomes our government has set. And the outcomes our government is set to achieve is to deliver the naval infrastructure and capabilities that we need for the future, to deliver the frigates, the submarines, the offshore patrol vessels, the investment indeed in other technology and capability that our Defence Department requires. $90 billion worth of commitments that we have made compared to the big fat zero that we inherited when we came to office.
Order. Senator Canavan.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Energy and Emissions Reduction, Senator Said Seselja. Can the Minister advise the Senate on the importance of gas in Australia's COVID recovery, especially in rural and regional Australia?
The Minister representing the Minister for Energy and Emissions Reduction, Senator Seselja.
Well, thank you very much, Mr President. I thank my friend and colleague Senator Canavan for the question. A gas-fired recovery is a key part of the government's JobMaker plan, and it is central to a strong Australia as we recover from the coronavirus pandemic. Now, Australia's competitive advantage has always been based on cheap energy, and gas will be central to our ongoing economic recovery. We want to see Australian gas working for all Australians, especially in our regions. And we're taking action to deliver more Australian gas to where it is needed at the right price. Now, this will be delivered through a comprehensive plan of 13 measures that will establish an open, competitive hub model like the Henry Hub in the United States. Now, the three key action areas are unlocking supply, efficient transportation and empowering consumers. Now, we're progressing a range of regulatory reforms and assessing what critical national gas infrastructure is needed to create a competitive gas market that will drive down prices. We're investing $220 million to support development in the Beetaloo Basin.
Senator Watt,
we've ensured our
Senator
major
Keneally,
gas exporters offer more gas on the domestic
Senator Seselja, please resume your seat. Senator Canavan, this is not helping. Senator Canavan, this isn't helping. We're wasting question time. Senator Keneally, you've been particularly voluble this question time. I'm going to ask you to restrain yourself for the last 10 minutes. Senator Keneally. Senator Seselja to continue.
Thank you, Mr President.
Count to 10.
We've ensured that
Senator Stirl.
We've ensured that major gas exporters offer more gas on the domestic market more often and on more competitive terms, meaning lower prices. We're developing an industry code of conduct to address pricing principles, and all of our collective efforts are delivering results. Even before COVID-19, we saw reductions in the domestic spot price across eastern Australia, and these prices have continued to fall. Wholesale gas prices on the East Coast during 2020 were around 40% lower than prices in 2019, and these prices remain low. Lower gas prices are also driving down wholesale electricity prices. Those opposite can't even work out if they support gas, but thankfully for Australian households and businesses, we aren't confused on the issue.
Senator Canavan, a supplementary question. On my left, Senator Canavan.
Thank you, Mr President. Can the Minister outline how Australia's manufacturing sector will benefit from a gas-fired recovery?
Senator Seselja.
Thank you very much, and I thank the Senator. The gas is a critical enabler of Australia's economy. It supports our manufacturing sector that employs over 850,000 Australians, and is an essential input in the production of a range of items, such as plastics for PPE and fertiliser for food production. Ensuring a reliable, stable and affordable supply of gas to power Australian jobs and industries is one of the highest priorities of this Liberal and National government. Those opposite don't have a plan to secure dispatchable capacity that the manufacturing industry will rely on into the future. And we know, Senator McAllister, we know what your plans are. That's because their real plan is always higher taxes, more and higher taxes. We saw it at the last election with their $387 billion plan for more taxes. They've only got one plan. The Liberals and Nationals can deliver the secure, reliable and affordable energy that will underpin our economic recovery, create new jobs and grow our manufacturing sector.
Senator Canavan, a final supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. Can the Minister also outline to the Senate how gas can help bring down energy prices for everyday Australians and any risks to delivering increased gas supply and
Senator
lower
Watt,
energy prices.
Order, Senator Canavan. Senator Watt, we cannot slip to the point where I can't hear the question. Remember my rule, Senator Watt. Count to 10 after your name is called, silently at least. Senator Seselja.
Well, thank you very much. I thank Senator Canavan for the question. I thank Senator Watt for the interjection as well, because he's talking about, he's forgotten what he stands for, and I'm asked whether there are risks. Well, there are a number of risks. The Leader of the Opposition, the Shadow Minister for Energy and, of course, the Shadow Minister for Queensland Resources. He is a risk. And you talk about forgetting what you stand for. You can imagine going back to activist Murray Watt, how he would be shaking his head now. Back when he was handing out free joints at university, he would be shaking his head. That he now has to pretend to support the Queensland resources industry. I mean, does he actually support it, or does he just have to pretend? I mean, it reminds me of George Costanza having to pretend to be an architect. At least his heart was in it, Murray. At least his heart was in it. We support the gas industry, whether the Labor Party does or not.
On my right, we're not going to get into desk banging. Senator Chisholm.
A very lame act to follow, thank you, Mr. President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Health.
I'll allow Senator Chisholm to start again because I can't hear it. On my right, Senator Keneally.
Is to the Minister representing the Minister for Health and Aged Care, Senator Colbeck. I refer to disturbing reports today that 2 elderly Queensland aged care residents, aged 94 and 88, have been given 4 times the recommended dose of the COVID-19 vaccine by a doctor contracted through the federal government, with one of those residents being hospitalised as a result. How has this mistake been allowed to occur?
The Minister representing the Minister for Health and Aged Care, Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thanks, Senator, for the question. It's a very important question, Mr. President. And just can I say at the outset, I think I might have said an incorrect number in my previous answer. I said 4 million instead of 4 billion, so I would like to correct the record on that to start with. Mr. President, the circumstance that occurred in Queensland yesterday, Mr. President, should not have happened. It should not have happened. The government is just as concerned as anybody else in this chamber with respect to the circumstance that occurred in Queensland yesterday. What occurred is, on my advice, Mr. President, there was a clinical incident where at a scheduled vaccination clinic at the Holy Spirit Home in Castledean in Queensland, where the vaccination provider dispensed more than the prescribed dose of the Pfizer vaccine to 2 residents, Mr. President. My understanding is that they are both currently in hospital, but fortunately, Mr. President, they are both well at this stage. They're both okay, which is quite important for us to all understand, Mr. President. Both families have been advised of the incident, and the Deputy Chief Medical Officer, Professor Michael Kidd, has been commissioned to conduct a thorough investigation of the circumstances of this event, Mr. President. Once the circumstances are understood, the VOC will work with the provider to implement the appropriate safeguards to prevent these events occurring again. Mr. President, the doses were both administered by a GP working on behalf of Healthcare Australia, who obviously are the contractor for providing the service in Queensland.
Senator Chisholm, a supplementary question.
Thanks, Mr. President. On 16 February 2021, in a joint press release with the Minister for Health, Minister Colbeck said that, and I quote, "The Australian government would be responsible for leading the implementation of the COVID-19 vaccination program in the aged care sector." Does this minister accept responsibility on behalf of the Morrison government for this mistake?
Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator is correct in the fact that we have contracted, as a federal government, 2 companies to undertake the vaccination rollout in aged care facilities across the country, Mr. President. Mr. President, and this is a very important rollout process, as I have indicated on a number of occasions over the last 2 weeks. The fact that we have now commenced the vaccination rollout in aged care facilities to protect senior Australians is one of the most important things that we will do as a part of the COVID-19 recovery process.
Senator Wong, on a point of order.
Direct relevance. The Minister has been asked whether or not he accepts responsibility on behalf of the government for this mistake. I'd ask you to remind him of the question.
Senator Wong, again, my view, and I will take advice from the clerk on this, is if the minister is keeping his comments to a narrow construction of the question, and the question referred to the Commonwealth responsibility, or the Australian responsibility for the rollout in the aged care program, I can't go to content of his answer. He's not free to talk about anything else, but I think that is directly relevant. And as I said earlier, I'll take some advice from the clerk about this, but I believe I'm being asked to direct him on content. Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr. President. And the government is being quite open and upfront about this whole process. In fact, the Health Minister came out this morning and conducted a press conference with the Chief Medical Officer to inform people of the circumstance. We have been working with the Queensland Chief Health Officer in relation to it, and we're doing everything we possibly can to ensure the integrity of the rollout program, because we do take responsibility for it across the nation to ensure senior Australians are protected from COVID-19.
Senator Chisholm, a final supplementary question.
Thanks, Mr. President. Lincoln Hopper, CEO of St Vincent's Care Services, has said that the mistake has, and I quote, caused us to question whether some of the clinicians given the job of administering the vaccine have received the appropriate training. Why has the government neglected to ensure proper training in the rollout of the vaccine?
Order. Senator. Order. Order. We'll get to this last answer when there's some modicum of order across the chamber. Senator Ayres, Senator Canavan, Senator Ayres, Senator McKenzie, Senator Rennick, Senator Colbeck to answer the question.
Thank you, Mr. President. And this is an important question. I acknowledge that this is a very important question. Mr. President, the vaccines were administered by a trained general practitioner, a doctor. Mr. President, the doctor has been stood down pending an investigation by the Deputy Chief Medical Officer, as I've indicated before, and a full investigation is being undertaken by the Deputy Chief Medical Officer in conjunction with the Queensland Chief Health Officer, the local PHN, and we appreciate the cooperation of the Queensland CHO, Dr Jeanette Young, as a part of this process. Our determination, Mr. President, is to ensure that this rollout occurs effectively, appropriately and safely for all Australians, particularly those in aged care. There is a training program that was in place for those who are rolling out this program.
The answer has expired. Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, Mr. President. Mr. President, I ask that further questions be placed on notice. I further table for the Senate in further information in relation to Senate order for production of documents number 786, outlining the information provided to the Senate Economic References Committee on 7 and 8 December 2020.
Senator Hanson.